Picture this. A football field, empty, quiet, just after sunset. The sprinklers are running in slow arcs across the grass. And in the middle of that empty field, a man in his 30s, no cameras around him, no coaches watching, is running drills by himself. Sprints, cuts, bursts off the line. He is not on any team's roster. He has not played a single down in almost 2 years. His name is Aaron Donald, and until a few weeks ago, everyone in football believed his story was finished. Closed. A gold jacket waiting for him in Canton, Ohio, and nothing left to prove. But then, on a Sunday afternoon in June, everything changed. And I mean everything. Because the Los Angeles Rams pulled off one of the most jaw-dropping trades in recent NFL memory. And in doing so, they may have accidentally lit a fire in a man who was supposed to be done. A fire that could bring back the single most dominant defensive player of his generation. And if that happens, if Aaron Donald really does walk back through those facility doors and put on that blue and gold jersey one more time, he would be walking into a defense that already has one of the scariest pass rushers alive. A man named Myles Garrett. Two of the most terrifying defensive players of the last 15 years. On the same team. At the same time. It sounds like a video game glitch. It sounds like something a 12-year-old would draw up in a notebook during math class. But this is real. This is actually happening, or at least it might be. And by the end of this story, you're going to understand exactly how we got here, why it matters so much, and why the entire football world is holding its breath waiting to see what Aaron Donald decides to do. So let's rewind. Let's go back and build this story from the ground up, because to understand how big this moment is, you need to understand who these two men really are. Let's start with Aaron Donald. If you were not paying close attention to football over the last decade, you might not fully grasp just how rare a player Aaron Donald was. There have been great pass rushers before him. There have been great defensive tackles before him. But very few players in the history of the sport have combined the traits Donald had. He stood just about 6 feet 1 inch tall, which by NFL standards, especially for a defensive tackle, is short. Most of the men he lined up against were taller than him, heavier than him, built like brick walls stacked on top of each other. And yet, every single Sunday, Aaron Donald made those bigger men look like they were standing still. He came out of the University of Pittsburgh, not exactly a school known for churning out generational defensive superstars. Scouts loved his get-off, his first step, the way he exploded out of his stance faster than the offensive lineman could even react. But there were doubts. He was undersized. Some analysts wondered if his game would translate to the pro level, where the linemen are bigger, stronger, more technically sound. The Rams selected him with the 13th overall pick in the 2014 draft. And almost immediately, the doubts disappeared. From his very first season, Donald was different. He did not just get past blockers, he demolished them. He had this uncanny ability to bend around bodies, to slip through gaps that should not have existed, to generate more raw power out of a shorter frame than seemed physically possible. Coaches around the league started building entire game plans around trying to slow him down, and most of them failed anyway. Over the years, the accolades piled up in a way that almost became repetitive to list. Multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year, perennial All-Pro selection, a member of an all-decade team. And in February of 2022, the crowning achievement, a Super Bowl championship with the Los Angeles Rams, played right in their home stadium in Los Angeles. That night, Donald did what he always did. He wrecked the game. He forced the final incomplete pass that sealed the victory, coming free off the edge and forcing a rushed, desperate throw that fell to the turf as the clock hit 0. It was the perfect ending to a career that already had nothing left to prove. And yet, he kept playing. For one more season. Then, in the summer of 2024, after months of speculation, after cryptic social media posts and reports swirling about his future, Aaron Donald made it official. He was retiring. He walked away from football, from the game he had dominated for a decade, on his own terms, healthy enough to have kept playing if he wanted to, but choosing instead to close the book while he was still on top. For most players, that would be the end of the story. A clean, respected retirement. A legacy locked in stone. But something strange started happening in the months and years that followed. Donald never fully disappeared. He kept showing up at the Rams facility. Not as a coach. Not as an official employee. Just around. Working out. Doing drills. People close to the team would occasionally mention seeing him on the practice field. Running through pass rush moves like he still had a game to prepare for. It was a small detail at the time. a curiosity, a guy who loved training, staying in shape out of habit. But looking back now, it feels like foreshadowing. Now, let's turn to the other half of this story. Let's talk about Myles Garrett. If Aaron Donald was the standard for defensive dominance in the middle of the field, Myles Garrett became that same standard on the edge. Garrett was drafted first overall in 2017 by the Cleveland Browns, a franchise that, for most of that decade, was one of the least successful organizations in professional sports. Season after season of losing, coaching changes, quarterback carousels that never seemed to end. And through almost all of it, there was one constant. Myles Garrett, doing everything humanly possible to drag that franchise toward respectability, even when the team around him could not hold up its end of the bargain. Garrett is built differently than most edge rushers. 6 feet 4 inches, sculpted like something out of a superhero movie, with a rare blend of speed, bend, and raw power that made him a nightmare matchup for even the best defensive tackles in the league. Over his 8 seasons in Cleveland, he racked up over 100 career sacks, hundreds of tackles, dozens of forced fumbles, and a mountain of individual accolades, including being named the NFL's Defensive Player of the Year. He became, without much argument, one of the 2 or 3 best pure pass rushers on the planet. But greatness on a losing team can wear on a person. Year after year, Garrett watched the Browns cycle through quarterbacks, through coordinators, through 5-year plans that never quite worked out. He gave his body, his effort, his prime years to an organization that could never quite build a winner around him. And by the start of 2025, something in him had clearly shifted. Reports began to surface that Garrett was growing frustrated with the direction of the franchise. Then, in January of 2025, he made it official and public. He requested a trade out of Cleveland. At first, the Browns pushed back hard. Their general manager stated publicly that they had no plans to move their franchise cornerstone, no matter how loud the trade request got. For a while, it looked like Garrett might simply be stuck, a superstar trapped in a situation he no longer wanted to be in, forced to play out another season for a team going in a different direction than he was. But pressure has a way of building. And eventually, in the summer of 2025, the Browns relented. On the 1st of June, in a trade that sent shockwaves through the entire league, Cleveland agreed to send Myles Garrett to the Los Angeles Rams. The price was steep. The Rams gave up defensive end Jared Verse, a young rising talent in his own right, along with 3 separate draft picks, a package significant enough to show just how badly Los Angeles wanted this deal done. Just stop and think about that for a second. The Rams gave up a promising young pass rusher and a stack of premium draft capital, resources that most front offices treat like gold, all to bring in one single player. That is how much they believed in what Myles Garrett could do for their defense. That is how badly they wanted a true elite, game-wrecking force off the edge. And the moment that trade became official, something almost immediate started happening in the background. Whispers, rumors, connections being drawn between 2 stories that, up until that point, had felt completely separate. Because remember, Aaron Donald never fully left the Rams building. He had been working out there, quietly, consistently, for a while. And now, suddenly, the team had just acquired one of the most dominant pass rushers in football. A player many considered the closest thing the league had to the next Aaron Donald in terms of pure disruptive force. Fans started connecting the dots almost instantly. What if this trade wasn't just about improving the defense for this season? What if it was the spark that could bring Donald all the way back? It did not take long for that whisper to turn into something louder. Just one day after the trade was finalized, Aaron Donald reportedly reached out to a well-known sports media personality, a former NFL punter turned popular podcast host. Donald sent him a simple, short message. 3 words, essentially. It got me thinking. That was it. No confirmation. No grand announcement. Just a quiet little text message that immediately set the football world on fire, because everybody understood exactly what he was talking about. From there, the signs kept multiplying. Fans and reporters began noticing that Donald was spending even more time around the Rams facility, and not just casually jogging or lifting weights. People described him doing actual on-field drills, running through pass rush moves with real intensity, the kind of training you would expect from someone getting ready to suit up for a season, not someone just staying in shape for fun. And then Myles Garrett himself entered the conversation in a way that made things even more electric. On his personal social media account, Garrett posted a photo. It was a signed Aaron Donald jersey, framed, clearly something significant to him. The caption underneath was short, playful, and impossible to ignore. He wrote, "Simply unpacking." Fans immediately understood what he meant. It looked like Garrett was setting up his own locker or personal space at the Rams facility, and among the items he was arranging was a piece of memorabilia honoring the very man everyone hoped would soon be his new teammate. Not just a legend from before his time there. It gets even better. Around the same period, a popular football-focused social media account posted a piece imagining what it would look like if Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett actually lined up together on the same defensive front. The post described the idea of trying to game plan against a defensive line built around the two most destructive pass rushers of their generation, one dominating from the interior, the other terrorizing offensive tackles from the outside. It was framed as a dream, almost a fantasy scenario. But then Aaron Donald did something that made it feel a lot less like fantasy and a lot more like reality. He commented on that very post. Just a single emoji. 2 eyes. The kind of emoji people use online when they want to say, without actually saying it, "Pay attention, something is happening here." It was a small gesture. Technically nothing was confirmed, nothing was official, but symbolically, it was enormous. Aaron Donald, a man who had spent nearly 2 years staying completely quiet about any possibility of a comeback, was now publicly teasing it himself, with nothing more than a tiny digital reaction. Football insiders started weighing in too, not just fans speculating from the outside. A well-respected NFL reporter appeared on a major sports broadcast and gave what might be the clearest public update on the situation at that point. According to that reporter, there did appear to be real interest from both sides in making this happen. Donald, it was said, had been showing up at the facility on and off for years, working out, staying ready, staying close to the building even in retirement. But according to the same report, Donald had not yet made a final decision. He was still weighing it, still deciding whether to actually come back. And here is where the story gets even more interesting, because it is not just about whether Aaron Donald wants to play again. It is about how he wants to do it, if he does it at all. According to people close to the situation, including the Rams' general manager himself, Aaron Donald has always been described as a deeply principled individual. That phrase kept coming up, principled. And what that seems to mean, in practical terms, is that Donald is not the kind of player who would ever consider coming back in a limited, part-time, half-committed way. If he decides to do this, by all accounts, he is going to do it completely. All in. Full training camp mentality. Full commitment to being the best version of himself. The same relentless standard he held himself to during his entire playing career. He is not interested in coming back just to collect a paycheck or make a nostalgic appearance. If Aaron Donald puts the pads back on, it will be because he believes, deep down, that he can still be great. That single detail is what makes this story so tense, so genuinely uncertain, because it means this decision is not a small one for him. It is not something he is going to rush into just because the fans are excited or because a former teammate posted a photo online. He has to be completely certain, in his own mind and body, that this is the right move. And there is a lot to weigh. Think about what he would be walking back into. Nearly 2 full seasons away from professional football. Almost 2 years without the physical pounding, the collisions, the grinding weekly punishment that comes with being one of the most double and triple teamed players in the league. His body has had time to heal, to recover from years of accumulated wear. But stepping back into that world means stepping back into all of that punishment too. It is one thing to run drills alone on an empty practice field. It is a completely different thing to go head-to-head, every single snap, against professional offensive linemen who have spent their entire careers training specifically to stop players exactly like him. There is also the emotional side of this decision. Donald left the game on the highest possible note. A Super Bowl champion, a future first-ballot Hall of Famer, a legacy that is already completely secure no matter what happens next. Coming back carries risk, not just physical risk, but the risk of a story that does not end perfectly. What if age has caught up with him? What if the explosiveness that once made him unstoppable has faded, even slightly? Nobody wants to see a legend struggle. Donald knows that too. And by all accounts, he is not the kind of person who would be comfortable being anything less than dominant. But then there is the other side of the argument, the side that keeps pulling him back toward the field. Because for the first time since his retirement, the Rams suddenly have a genuine, elite, terrifying force on the other side of the defensive line. Myles Garrett is not just a good player. He is one of the very best pure pass rushers currently playing professional football. And when you pair a truly dominant edge rusher with a truly dominant interior force, something special happens to an entire defense, something that goes far beyond simple addition. Here's why that matters so much, in simple terms. When an offense faces a great pass rusher on one side of the field, they can often solve that problem. They can slide their protection toward him. They can send extra blockers his way. They can chip him with a tight end or a running back before he ever gets a clean run at the quarterback. One great player, no matter how great, can usually be managed, at least partially, through smart scheme and extra bodies. But when you have two elite, game-wrecking players on the same defensive line, one on the edge and one right up the middle, that math completely breaks down. If the offense slides their protection to deal with Garrett coming off the edge, that leaves fewer blockers available to handle Donald in the interior, or whoever else lines up there. If they focus everything on stopping the interior rush, Garrett is left one-on-one against a single offensive tackle, a matchup that, historically, very few tackles in the league have ever been able to win consistently. There simply are not enough blockers to go around. Something always has to give. And in modern football, when something has to give against a defense like that, it usually means the quarterback ends up flat on his back. That is the dream scenario Rams fans, and honestly a good chunk of the entire football world, have been imagining ever since that trade went through. A defensive front that offensive coordinators would have nightmares trying to plan around. A pairing so rare, so historically significant, that it would immediately be talked about alongside some of the greatest defensive duos the sport has ever seen. And that brings us to one of the deeper layers of this entire story. What Myles Garrett himself has said publicly about wanting to play alongside Aaron Donald. In interviews, including one appearance on a popular sports and culture podcast, Garrett made it clear that he was fully aware of the sensitivity around this decision. He talked about respecting Donald's stated position, the position Donald had held firmly for a long time, that his playing days were behind him. Garrett explained that he did not want to pressure Donald into anything. His words, more or less, were that he did not want to press him, that he wanted Donald to find that spark on his own, in his own time, without outside forces pushing him one way or the other. Garrett went even further, talking about how completely fulfilled Donald seemed when he walked away from the game the first time. He described Donald as a man who felt like he had done everything there was to do, who had won everything there was to win, and who left the sport with total peace about that chapter of his life being finished. That is a powerful thing for a current player to say about a retired legend, a level of respect that shows just how much Garrett understands the significance of what he might be asking Donald to reconsider. But even with all that respect, even with all that careful, hands-off language, Garrett has not been shy about signaling, in small but unmistakable ways, that he would absolutely love to have Donald as a teammate. That photo of the signed jersey, the caption about unpacking, more recently, additional social media activity that fans and reporters have interpreted as Garrett continuing to gently nudge the door open, without ever forcing it. It paints a picture of a younger superstar who deeply respects a legend's legacy, but who also cannot help hoping, at least a little, that the legend decides there is one more chapter left to write. And there have been physical signs too, not just words and social media posts. Multiple reports have described Donald being spotted at the Rams' practice facility doing actual, structured drills on the field. Not just lifting weights in a private gym somewhere. Actual football drills. The kind that suggest genuine preparation rather than casual maintenance. That detail alone shifted the entire tone of the conversation around the league. It is one thing to imagine a legend occasionally working out to stay fit. It is another thing entirely to hear that he is running structured pass rush drills at the very facility where his old team now practices, right around the time speculation about his return is at its peak. Even head coach Sean McVay has been drawn into this story, acknowledging publicly, in his own way, the situation surrounding Donald and this ongoing speculation. When a franchise's own head coach is fielding questions about a retired player's potential return, that tells you just how real and how serious this conversation has become inside the building, not just outside of it among fans and media. So where does that leave us right now, heading toward the start of the season? As of the most recent reporting, Aaron Donald has still not made a final, official decision. He has not stood in front of a podium and announced anything. There has been no press conference, no signed contract, no jersey number reissued. What exists right now is a mountain of smoke, cryptic text messages, emoji comments, Photos of jerseys being unpacked, reports of workouts and drills, public comments from teammates, coaches, and insiders who all seem to believe something significant is brewing beneath the surface. And that uncertainty, honestly, is part of what makes this story so gripping. Because we are talking about a man who does absolutely nothing halfway. If Aaron Donald announces he is coming back, you can be almost certain he will show up completely locked in, training camp ready, determined to prove that even after nearly 2 years away, he can still be one of the most dominant defensive players in the entire league. There will be no soft landing, no gentle reintroduction. Knowing his history, knowing his standards, it will be all or nothing. Think about what that would actually look like on Sundays this season. A defensive line featuring a former Defensive Player of the Year and Super Bowl champion, who many consider one of the greatest interior defensive linemen to ever play the game, lined up right alongside a reigning Defensive Player of the Year, one of the most explosive edge rushers the league has ever produced. 2 former number 1 caliber talents. 2 players who have each redefined what dominance looks like at their respective positions, sharing the same huddle, chasing the same quarterbacks, terrorizing the same offensive lines, on the very same defense. It would not just be good football, it would be historic. The kind of pairing that gets replayed in highlight reels for decades. The kind of story that gets told to future generations of football fans. The year 2 legends decided to share a defensive line and turn an entire season into pure chaos for opposing offenses. Of course, none of this is guaranteed. Football history is filled with comeback stories that never actually happened. Players who flirted with the idea of returning, who trained, who teased fans with hints and social media posts, and who ultimately decided, for one reason or another, to stay retired. Bodies do not always cooperate the way hearts and minds want them to. Sometimes the risk of tarnishing a perfect legacy outweighs the thrill of one more run. Sometimes, after enough reflection, a person simply decides that the chapter they closed is meant to stay closed. But there is something different about this particular situation, something that feels less like idle speculation and more like genuine momentum building toward an answer. The timing of the Garrett trade, the immediate reaction from Donald himself, reaching out that same week with a message that practically confirmed something was stirring inside him. The consistent pattern of him showing up at the facility, not just once, but repeatedly, over an extended period of time. The willingness of people close to the situation, including the team's own general manager, to openly discuss the possibility rather than shutting it down. All of these small details, stacked on top of each other, paint a picture of a decision that feels closer to being made than further away. So here is where we stand as we head toward the new season. The Los Angeles Rams have already made one of the boldest moves of the entire NFL offseason, trading away significant draft capital and a promising young player just to acquire Myles Garrett, a move that instantly transformed their defensive front into one of the most feared units in the league on its own. That alone would have been a massive story this offseason. That alone would have opposing offensive coordinators losing sleep, trying to figure out how to protect their quarterbacks. But layered on top of that trade is this much bigger, much more emotional question. Will Aaron Donald, the man who once seemed completely, permanently retired, decide that the arrival of Myles Garrett is exactly the spark he needed to lace up his cleats one more time? Will we actually see these 2 generational talents, 2 of the most dominant defensive forces of the last 15 years, standing side by side under the lights, chasing quarterbacks together, wrecking game plans together, adding to legacies that are already among the greatest in the history of their respective positions? Nobody outside of Aaron Donald himself truly knows the answer yet. Not the reporters, not the fans, maybe not even the Rams front office, not with complete certainty. What we do know is that the door is open. The door has been open since that trade went through in June. And every signal we have seen since then, the text messages, the workouts, the emoji, the jersey, the careful public comments from teammates and coaches, all of it points toward a decision that feels closer than ever before. If it happens, if Aaron Donald really does walk back onto that field wearing that Rams jersey again, standing next to Myles Garrett, it will be one of the most electric storylines in recent NFL memory. A legend, coaxed out of retirement not by money, not by pressure, but by the simple, irresistible pull of getting to chase quarterbacks one more time alongside one of the few players on earth who might genuinely match his level of destruction. And if it does not happen, if Donald ultimately decides his story really is finished, that will be its own kind of powerful ending too. A man secure enough in what he already accomplished that even the temptation of teaming up with a player like Myles Garrett was not enough to pull him back. Either way, this off-season gave us something rare in professional sports. A genuine, unresolved, deeply human question hanging over an entire fan base and an entire league. Will the Rams have Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett going into the season? Right now, nobody can say for certain, but the pieces are all on the table. The spark has been lit. And somewhere, on a quiet practice field, a man who was supposed to be done is still running drills, still deciding, still thinking about it. And when that decision finally comes, whichever way it goes, the entire football world will be watching. So keep your eyes on Los Angeles. Keep your eyes on that practice facility. Because somewhere between one more emoji, one more workout, and one more quiet conversation, the answer to this question is already forming. We just have not heard it out loud yet. And when we do, it might just change the entire complexion of the upcoming NFL season. But before we close this story, let's slow down for a moment and really sit inside the history of this. Because pairing up two truly elite defensive players is rarer than people realize. It is easy to say the words, imagine two great pass rushers on the same team. But very few times in the history of the sport has it actually worked out the way people hoped. And understanding why makes this Rams situation even more remarkable. Go back a couple of decades, and you will find teams that tried to build super lines on paper, stacking talented names together, only to watch injuries, egos, or simple bad luck prevent it from ever fully coming together. Sometimes one player got hurt right as the other one hit his prime. Sometimes a coaching change scrapped the scheme that made the pairing work in the first place. Sometimes contracts and money forced a team to break apart a dominant duo just as it was starting to click. The NFL has seen plenty of near misses, plenty of what could have beens. That is part of what makes the truly great defensive pairings, the ones that actually happened and actually lived up to the hype, so legendary. Think about the great defensive lines of the past that terrorized quarterbacks for years at a time. Units where opposing coaches would spend entire weeks of preparation just trying to figure out who to double team and who to simply live with getting beat by. Those defenses become part of football folklore. Players from those units get remembered forever, not just for their individual stats, but for what they built together, the identity they gave their franchise. If Aaron Donald returns and lines up next to Myles Garrett, the Rams would instantly be in that conversation. Not hypothetically, not eventually, immediately, because both of these men are already, individually, among the most feared defenders of their entire generation. Combining them is not a projection or a hope for future greatness. It is two proven, established, decorated superstars, both already holders of the same individual award, both already recognized as among the very best to ever play their respective positions, choosing to share a defensive front in the same season. Now let's talk a little more about what actually makes each of these two players so uniquely dangerous, because it is worth understanding the specific tools each of them brings, especially if you are newer to football and still learning what separates a good player from a truly great one. Start with Donald. His game was never about being the biggest or the strongest player on the field, even though he was remarkably powerful for his size. His true gift was leverage and explosiveness combined with an almost unmatched motor. He played every single snap like it was his last, refusing to take plays off even when games were already decided. Offensive linemen would tell you, in interviews over the years, that facing Donald was uniquely exhausting, not just physically, but mentally, because he never gave them a moment to relax. He would attack from different angles, use different moves, disguise his intentions, and constantly force blockers to guess wrong. And when a 300-pound offensive lineman guesses wrong against Aaron Donald, the result is almost always the same. The quarterback ends up on the ground, or the running back gets stuffed at the line, or the whole play simply collapses before it ever had a chance to develop. Garrett, on the other hand, built his dominance on a different, but equally terrifying, combination of traits. His length and speed allowed him to threaten offensive tackles in a way most edge rushers simply cannot. He could win with pure speed around the outside, forcing tackles to overcommit, and then counter back inside with a devastating spin or bull rush that left blockers grasping at air. His get-off, the explosiveness of his first step out of his stance, is regularly described by teammates and coaches as some of the fastest in the entire league. Combine that with elite bend, the ability to change direction and dip around a blocker's outside shoulder while still maintaining speed, and you get a player who is quite simply one of the hardest one-on-one matchups in modern football. Now imagine facing both of them, on the same snap, in the same defensive front. If you are an offensive coordinator building a game plan, you suddenly have to make an impossible decision every single play. Do you slide protection toward Garrett on the edge, knowing that leaves your interior more vulnerable to whoever is lining up in Donald's old spot? Or in this hypothetical scenario, Donald himself? Do you keep extra blockers in to help against the interior rush, knowing that leaves your tackle isolated one-on-one against one of the fastest, most explosive edge rushers alive? There is no clean answer. There is no perfect scheme. Every choice you make opens up a different weakness for the defense to exploit. That is the terrifying beauty of this potential pairing, and it is exactly why fans, players, and analysts across the league have been buzzing about it non-stop since the rumors first started circulating. Let's take a moment now and really think about what this would mean for the city of Los Angeles, and for Rams fans specifically, because there is an emotional layer to this story that goes beyond pure football strategy. Aaron Donald is not just a great player to Rams fans. He is the face of an era. He is the player fans point to when they talk about the franchise's return to relevance. The player who helped deliver the franchise's first Super Bowl championship since moving back to Los Angeles. For an entire generation of young fans in that city, Aaron Donald has been the standard, the measuring stick for what greatness looks like in the blue and gold. When he retired, it left a real void, not just on the field, but in the identity of the franchise itself. So imagine what it would mean, emotionally, for that fan base to watch him come back. Not as a coach standing on the sideline in a polo shirt, but as an actual player, suiting up, running out of the tunnel, standing in the huddle. It would be one of the most emotional moments in franchise history, a legend returning not out of financial necessity, not because he needs one more contract, but purely because he still believes he has more left to give, and because a new teammate's arrival reignited something in him that had gone quiet. And for Myles Garrett, the story carries its own emotional weight. Remember, this is a man who spent 8 long years pouring everything he had into a franchise that could never quite build the winning environment around him that he deserved. Being traded to the Rams already represented a massive turning point in his career, a chance to finally play for a team with legitimate championship aspirations. But if Aaron Donald joins him, it becomes something even bigger. It becomes a chance to chase a title alongside a player who already knows exactly what winning a Super Bowl feels like, a mentor of sorts, even though Garrett himself is already an established Supers.